Welcome, everybody, to the Horizon Lodge virtual class series, Thelemic Arts. In this class, we're going to examine some practical approaches to true will. My name is Melissa Holm, and I am a longtime member of Horizon Lodge Ordo Templi Orientis. You can find more information about Horizon Lodge at our website, seattle-oto.org. You can also find us at our Facebook page, Horizon O.T.O. There are more rituals and class content on this YouTube channel, so check them out. While this class is free of charge, we appreciate your support for this and future content, as well as for the maintenance of our temple in Seattle. You can donate via PayPal by using the email address horizon@seattle-oto.org. I'll be speaking with you today not only as a Thelemite and a magician, but through the lens of my vocation as a continuous improvement coach, where I have experience applying problem-solving and goal-setting methodologies in both business and personal contexts. It has become increasingly clear to me in recent years that in several fields of work, including several schools of leadership, that ideas have kind of caught up with Aleister Crowley and his ideas of true will and the great work. I have found in my role as an improvement coach that I am essentially teaching magic to business people. In turn, I have discovered several tools and methodologies that I've been able to incorporate into my magical practice, with the lines between the magical and the mundane ever blurring and synthesized. I'll be happy to share some of these with you. In this workshop, we will be covering a brief overview of Thelemic cosmology and a definition of true will. Malkuth, the manifest plane, or home of the practical. We're going to do an exercise called IKIGAI, which means reason for being. Kata, a method for finding your direction. And PDSA, a simple acronym to help you remember the scientific method of problem solving that will help you create the reality you seek. Before we jump into the practical approaches to finding and achieving purpose in life, let's take a brief look at the context that Thelemic cosmology creates as the perspective of an individual and the goal of the great work. In Magic, Part 3, Chapter 0, Crowley puts forth his magical theory of the universe, which sets the stage for the great work and the concept of true will. He states, infinite space is called the goddess Nuit, while the infinitely small and atomic yet omnipresent point is called Hadit. Crowley goes on to describe that the unstable interplay between Nuit and Hadit creates a composite deity, Haru-Ra-Ha, which contains two parts, Ra-Hur-Kuit, the active principle, and Hur-Par-Krat, the passive principle. This conjunction is also represented by Kether, the summit of the Kabbalistic tree of life from which all existence emanates. This emanation here symbolized by the lightning flash of descent down through the spheres to Malkuth, the material plane. Ra-Hur-Kuit comes to reside at Tibereth, the center of the solar system, represented by the remaining Sephiroth. Hur-Par-Krat comes to reside in Malkuth. The path of the serpent is the mystical way of return. Its tail is in the earth, from whence it came, and its head reaches up to where the crown of Kether in the highest heavens. It sheds its skin continuously. It is the way of gnosis, of transformation and transmutation, of understanding, and of the growth of the individual. Another way of expressing this is through the story of the Tetragrammaton, or Yod He Vav He. As Kether, the supreme unity that resides above the concepts of duality, succumbs to its instability and splits into the supreme mother-father, Babylon, chaos, the positive-negative dichotomy. These are represented in the Tetragrammaton as Yod, the father or king who lives in Chokmah, and He, the mother or queen in Binah. Their union also gives birth to twins, the son or prince represented by the vow. He organizes Sephirot 4 to 9, the macrocosm, and also resides in Tiphereth. The final He represents the daughter or princess, who is literally trapped in Malkuth, the manifest plane, often referred to as the microcosm, the lesser world. This magical family represents at the macrocosmic level the creation of the entire universe, and at the microcosmic level represents the incarnation of every individual person, each union of a very particular Hadith with a very particular Nuit creates a particular Kether, and this divine spark is an individual soul, the piece of each person that is in direct connection with the divine. But the princess is sleeping. Although she is the daughter of the king and queen, she is far removed from the higher planes, having forgotten her connection to the all. In her waking moments she must set herself to work through the mystic path of the serpent in a mode of self-discovery and self-perfection to find her way back to her prince, her holy guardian angel. As Landuquette writes in Understanding the O.T.O, you've probably guessed that you and I are the fairy tale princess. We are almost completely asleep to the larger spiritual reality and are restlessly thrashing around in the bed of the material plane, trying to understand everything with our laughably inadequate senses and explain with our laughably inadequate language. Aleister Crowley writes in Liber Samak, section G, line 7, here is summed the entire process of bringing the conditioned universe to knowledge of itself through the formula of generation. A soul implants itself in sense-hoodwinked body and reason-fettered mind, makes them aware of their inmate, and thus to partake of its own consciousness of the light. And from his commentary on Liber Alva Legis, to know itself, each such star or soul must eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, by accepting labor and pain as its portion, and death as its doom. That is, it must reveal its nature to itself by formulating that nature as duality. And so, this is the nature of the great work in Thelema, a process of using particular spiritual practices which lead to the mystical union of the self and the all. Now let's take a deeper look at our starting point, the material plane, where we, the princess, are sleeping. If the point of the great work is attainment of union with the all, what is the point of caring about the physical and manifest plane? Again, from Magic in Theory and Practice, Crowley writes, the single supreme ritual is the attainment of the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. It is the raising of the complete man in a vertical straight line. To continue the story of the princess, we must wake up. We must reconnect with our full identity as divine creatures. Then and only then can we ascend to higher planes, connect with the Prince, our holy guardian angel, and through that union connect again with the All. In mystical Kabbalah, Dion Fortune writes of Malkuth that it is the only Sephirah that is represented as parti-colored instead of a unit, for it is divided into 4 quarters, which are assigned to the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water. She later says, it represents the end results of all the activities of the tree. It is the nadir of evolution, the outermost point through which all life must pass before returning whence it came. This division by 4 is a useful tool and a common occurrence in esoteric classification that we have already discussed once in the form of tetragrammaton. Other examples of this division can be found in the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, the parts of the soul, and the tarot suits of discs, swords, wands, and cups. In a traditional magical practice, we use these and many other tools to work toward the completeness necessary to successfully interact with the higher planes. It may seem simple, but it is not easy. The task requires self-awareness, vulnerability, and practice. In Magic, Crowley describes clearly the necessity to explore and master parts of one's nature that are least comfortable, and not to simply enjoy practices that come easy and pander to our prejudices and preferences. For example, a magician of a fiery temperament with a deep passion for martial arts or days at the gun range may find it attractive to focus their magical practice on invoking fire and working with Mars. And they may find it a more challenging prospect, even an undesirable show of weakness, to create a relationship with the emotional water and more feminine archetypes. The magician must be able to see these imbalances and discipline themselves to seek balance if they are to become complete and succeed in the great work. In A Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism, Gareth Knight writes, the aim of the ordinary man is to live his life avoiding all difficulties, discomforts, and unpleasantness within the bounds of his conscience. The esoteric student should be a man with a very demanding conscience, and so his life is more difficult. This does not mean that he goes about seeking for or making things more difficult for himself, but he meets all obstacles as a challenge. And the greater the obstacles, the greater the opportunity it is for him to overcome the weakest aspects of his nature. As the higher Sephirot on the tree represent the macrocosm and the spiritual aspects of the psyche, there is danger in approaching them from an unbalanced state. If you do so, you will be naturally attracted to areas where you have overbalance of force, which will exacerbate the imbalance. Again, from Dion Fortune, if we try to escape from the discipline of matter before we have mastered the lessons of matter, we are not advancing heavenwards, but suffering from arrested development. This is not the way of advancement, but a way of retreat. This piece of advice was given to me often in my early esoteric career when I was told repeatedly that before I could really do effective magic, I first had the duty to get my Malkuth in order. Crowley's essay, Duty, outlines the chief rules of practical conduct to be observed by those who accept the law of Thelema. This document also happens to be divided into 4 parts. Number 1, duty to yourself. Number 2, duty to other individuals. 3, duty to mankind. And 4, duty to other beings and things. Although attention should be given to all 4 perspectives, we are going to be primarily examining one's duty to themselves as foundational work to success in the others. In the maxims of Delphi and Shakespeare, know thyself, and to thine own self be true. As we begin to shift from our overview of the esoteric framework of the great work into examining practical exercises collected in the mundane world, I will call out key points from duty as they may apply. As we will not be analyzing each point in detail, I strongly recommend the independent study of this essay. Crowley's first instruction is to find yourself to be the center of your own universe. At first glance, this can be interpreted as an admonishment to be self-centered, possibly selfish, and to perceive the actions and reactions, circumstances, and events of your existence to be entirely revolving about you. The flaw in this perspective is that it sets a stage wherein doing whatever you want without examination or accountability, either to self or others, seems acceptable. To become complete as a person, however, one must look at this center in a different way. As a person who strives through an ever-unfolding practice of self-knowledge, adjustment, and attainment toward achieving a healthy balance in the center of their universe. This is acknowledged in the steps that follow. Explore the nature and powers of your own being. Develop in due harmony and proportion every faculty which you possess. Contemplate your own nature. Find the formula of this purpose, or true will, in an expression as simple as possible. Extend the dominion of your consciousness and its control of all forces alien to it to the utmost. Never permit the thought or will of any other being to interfere with your own. Do not repress or restrict any true instinct of your nature, but devote all in perfection to the sole service of your one true will. And my personal favorite, the rule to rejoice. As I mentioned before, the task is not an easy one. It's also not one that is ever truly completed, nor is the attempt to balance forces meant to create rigidity or static thinking. As we live our lives, circumstances that affect us will require different skills to address, which is yet another reason to develop all faculties that we may become equipped to engage with these circumstances. Here are two brief examples. If you are walking down the street and are approached by a threatening person, use of martial defensive energies and skills to promote your safety may be required. So too will be the ability to readjust back to equilibrium after the threat has passed. Also, knowing how to connect with people who are important to us in a meaningful way is a valuable ability, but not at the expense of maintaining personally healthy boundaries. And so with these two examples, we can already see the rules in action. The need to develop in due harmony and proportion every faculty which we possess, and to never permit the thought or will of another being to interfere with our own. In the manifest universe, it is the role of the four elements to combine with each other. The practice of balancing our emotions, our intellect, our passions, and our physical realities is an ongoing task. The first concept I'd like to share with you as we move away from Crowley's body of work is the concept of IKIGAI, or reason for being. But first, a short aside about my use of Japanese terms. The work that I do in continuous improvement is based on lean methodologies that are rooted in, and in many cases directly a part of, the Toyota production system developed by Taiichi Ohno and Eiji Toyota. This work lays the foundation for my current approach to goal setting and problem solving, and so you will hear a couple of Japanese words used here with basic translations to convey the point of the exercise. I will not be drawing any deeper conclusions about the words, the exercises, and any possible connection to Japanese philosophy, since that is not my area of expertise or within the scope of this workshop. To participate in the IKIGAI exercise, you will need to gather some materials. Either print out the PDF linked in the comments of this video, or take some blank paper and a pencil to draw your own. It should look like the 4 intersecting circles shown here. If you don't feel confident drawing the circles or would like more space to write, you can simply draw 4 quadrants on your paper and participate in that way. If you need to pause the video to gather your materials, please do so now. Some of you may recognize this exercise from the Scarlet Tent event last fall in Seattle, where Sister Mackay used it as a tool to help people discover what kind of work they might do in O.T.O, which illustrates the range that this tool can be used for. Today, we're going to widen our view on the exercise and use it as a way of orienting ourselves to what our true will might be, or at least what direction we may want to take to start figuring it out. The prompts in this exercise and their answers are not an end goal, but a process of discovery. Some of the answers that you give today may be different in the future, and that's okay. I like to differentiate between small W will, those small actions that move me forward in my day-to-day life, hopefully in accord with my large W will, the essential parts that remain the same and become clearer the more that you study over time. In this exercise, we will be looking beyond what makes us happy and fulfills our desires by adding the concept of value to yourself and to the world. We will begin with the first of 4 prompts, one corresponding to each of the 4 circles. After each question and explanation, I will instruct you to pause the video and give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to write down your answers. When you are writing your answers, try not to spend too much time thinking. Write anything that comes to your mind immediately. If you are doing this exercise with other people, do not discuss it until everyone has completed the exercise. The first question is, what do you love? Here are some prompts to help you think about this question. What have you never gotten bored of? What things have you always been drawn back to over time? What gets you in the flow so that you forget to eat and drink while you do it? Pause the video and think about what you love. Give yourself a timer of 3 to 5 minutes while you answer this question in the top circle or the first quadrant of your page. When you have taken 3 to 5 minutes or exhausted your list, you may resume the video. Now that you have identified what you love, we can move on to the next prompt. What are you good at? This can be skills you have been spending time with and practicing, or things that other people often come to you for help with. What other things are you good at? Pause the video once more and give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to write down your answers. Then resume the video. The next prompt is traditionally, what can I be paid for? And if you are currently thinking about how to change your career to be in alignment with your true will, you are welcome to answer this question through that lens. For the purpose of this workshop, I reworded it to read, what motivates me, for several reasons. What I get paid for at my day job may not be in alignment with my true will, and I can decide that my money job is merely a vehicle through which I earn income to live in alignment with my will in other ways. If this is the case for you, at some point you might want to work out whether you can find a way to create a vocation that is in alignment with your will. But that may be a goal to consider later when you have more clarity about what that might look like. I want to point out that there is more than one way to receive value. To ask, what motivates you? Motivation can be divided into two camps: extrinsic motivators like titles, salaries, public acknowledgement, or intrinsic motivators like positive impact on the community, finding meaning in the work, or a sense of personal accomplishment. Ask yourself questions like, how do you define the value that your work brings you? And what have you done in the past that has given you a sense of value, intrinsically or extrinsically? Pause the video and give yourself 3 to 5 minutes to write down what motivates you, what you can be paid for. When you are ready to continue, resume the video. The fourth section is one that most people find the hardest to answer: what the world needs. In my experience, this is because it was outlined in the earlier material. It's more difficult to clearly view the world until we are standing firmly in our own identity. In personal development coaching, we often frame this as self-awareness comes before self-management, which comes before social management. So for this question, an easier way to frame it when you are first attempting it may be to ask, what does my world need? Think of your immediate society and community. What needs do you perceive are not served in the reality you live in? How can you contribute to create a positive effect on those around you? Pause the video and take 3 to 5 minutes to answer this question. When you are ready to continue, resume the video. All right. Take a moment to look at the sections and see if there is anything you'd like to add. If not, we'll move on to the next step, where it gets really interesting. All you need to do now is to review every section and circle items that appear in all 4 areas. For instance, if I put writing and journaling under what I love, and I'm also good at writing essays and prose, I've also put down that the world needs meaningful stories that illustrate truth and beauty. And I can get paid both monetarily and in pride of accomplishment for writing content. Bingo. Reason for being. But it really isn't that simple, is it? Not many people will have such an obvious outcome in doing IKIGAI for the first time. Remember, finding your reason for being is a constant process. Take your time, ask yourself tough questions, and answer them honestly. As with our earlier illustration about balancing elements, the IKIGAI exercise can also help you determine what practical steps you can take to move yourself closer to understanding your true purpose as you evaluate the different ways that the circles overlap. For instance, the intersection of what you love and what you are good at can be seen as your passion. And the intersection between what you are good at and, in this case, returning to the traditional question of what can you be paid for, lies your profession. Depending on how you answered this question, non-monetary motivators can still apply, or it may apply more cleanly to the next topic. Profession here refers to the career that one opts for, getting extensive training and acquiring special skills to become eligible to make a livelihood through it. At the intersection of what the world needs and what brings you value is identified as your vocation. Vocation is very close in definition to profession. In this context, vocation is a broader term than profession, which allows for those intrinsic motivators we discussed. Where profession requires training and qualification, vocation is the innate ability in an individual towards a particular occupation. And at the intersection between what you love and what the world needs is your mission. Now that we've looked into how to interpret the intersection of each circle with each of its neighbors in pairs, let's examine what happens when we take the circles in threes. For these comparisons, the motivation section is likely better contextualized as monetary wealth, but your mileage may vary. Starting with the top half of the diagram, the combination of passion and mission, and not considering what pays you, monetarily or otherwise, can leave you having a lot of fun, but not necessarily meeting your needs for income or other points of sustaining value. If this is your situation, consider ways that you can connect your mission and passion with a form of income and other motivators that will support you in the way of your going. Moving clockwise to the right side of the diagram, at the intersection of mission and vocation, is described as a sense of excitement and complacency, but also a sense of uncertainty. This may manifest as imposter syndrome, with uncertainty about whether anyone is taking you seriously. This might be countered by paying more attention to attaining the qualifications or experience to support your role. Moving on to the bottom three circles, the intersection of profession and vocation, we find a circumstance that is potentially a comfort zone. You're good at what you do, and you're getting paid adequately in tangible and intangible ways. The world is better for it, but without the element of loving what you're doing. This can supply a feeling of emptiness. Many who have a work-to-live mindset, where their professional employment simply a vehicle for sustaining their other interests, will be quite comfortable with this. Finally, on to the left three circles, the intersection of passion and profession. You love what you do, and you are qualified and supported in doing it, but you may have a feeling of uselessness or like you are obsolete, not fulfilling a real need in the world. Consider whether your passion and skills can be applied in a different context. You have now completed the IKIGAI exercise. I hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. Perhaps you have discovered some ways that you can focus your intentions in the future and balance your approach to interacting in the world. In the next section, we'll go through a few goal-setting and problem-solving techniques that may help you in this quest. So, we've talked a bit about ways to assess what areas need improvement in the process of completing ourselves in preparation for the great work, which in my experience has the side benefit of contributing to an overall improved well-being. Going through these processes both in a magical and a mundane context, for truly they are one and the same, you may now have some ideas on what you need to do, and this can seem overwhelming. Where to begin? There is a critical step often overlooked between creating a vision and establishing a new reality, and that is design. In her book, Untamed, Glennon Doyle describes this vision as one-dimensional, requiring a two-dimensional plan in order to become a tangible three-dimensional reality. This idea scans nicely with the Kabbalistic worlds model, where ideas descend from the archetypal world to the creative world to formative world before becoming tangible in the manifest world. When we live our life without design, without a thought other than the desires of the moment or meeting the expectations set for us by family or society, what Doyle calls indoctrination over imagination. We are living at a default setting. Most often, a default setting will be out of alignment with what we would design if we took the initiative to do so. Yes, it takes some effort, but our truest life, living in accordance with our true will, never promises to be easy. We need to let go of the lie that doing our will makes life easy or carefree. It's called the great work for a reason. Living without design is like wishcraft, thoughts and prayers. Gloria Steinem once said, "Dreaming is a form of planning, but it's a type of planning that is useless if it stops there." A plan doesn't have to be complex to be effective. Once you have a vision of where you want your life to be, go through some simple steps to get yourself there. Your vision for your entire life may be a large and complex one. Preferably, it is based on your current understanding of who you are now, what areas you need to work on, and where you ultimately see your life trajectory heading, based on core values as discovered through your magical practice, meditations, journaling, and exercises like IKIGAI. The first thing you will need to do when setting tangible goals to get you there is to scale it. Brain science tells us that at a certain tipping point of overwhelm or mental stress, our fight or flight response from the amygdala will send out signals to our frontal lobe, which essentially shut it down. At this point, we lose much of our ability to think critically and get lost in emotions and a need for safety. Science and experience also tell us that we need a certain level of discomfort to actually learn something new. Like finding a path through the wilderness, living a life in accordance with true will is not a linear path. As we've discussed, the process of determining one's true will is not a one and done event, but a continuous unfolding as we learn and grow. It's as if we are standing at the edge of an uncharted region and have a strong feeling and perhaps some evidence that the goal we seek is somewhere over there. We have some tools to help us get there, and it's up to us to decide how to begin. As a trailblazer, we'll have to contend with elevations, bodies of water, and other obstacles when creating a trail through the woods. And a sailor will navigate shallow waters, protruding rocks, strong currents, and changing winds. The path from A to B will tend to meander, all the while hopefully making progress in the desired direction. We see this same concept in business with the idea of mission, which is sometimes called true north. True north is the true will of corporate speak. In David Shoemaker's Living Thelema, he describes the goal of the neophyte in Malkuth as creating one's own astral atlas, an apt image which places one in the center of their universe, exploring natures and powers of their astral environment and in their own nature, and extending the dominion of consciousness. As in orienteering an unknown landscape, trying to choose the whole path all at once is daunting, if not an impossible task. In many cases, the most direct path is not the most useful one. As Crowley says in Magic, Appendix 6, the magician must be wary in his use of his powers. He must make every act not only in accord with his will, but with the properties of his position at the time. It might be my will to reach the foot of a cliff, but the easiest way, also the speediest, most direct, least obstructed, the minimum effort, would be to simply jump. I should have destroyed my will in the act of fulfilling it, or what I mistook for it. For the true will has no goal. Its nature is to go. One useful tool is what is referred to in the improvement field as the Improvement Kata, designed to manage incremental changes toward a larger goal. Kata is a Japanese word meaning form, and is a term used primarily in martial arts to describe a system of individual training exercises involving detailed choreographed patterns. Through the practice of kata, the pattern becomes second nature. An improvement kata is a pattern of thinking which focuses on simple processes for identifying target conditions, problems, and experimental countermeasures to meet your target. By practicing the improvement kata, the thinking pattern becomes second nature, and you no longer have to think about your problem-solving process and can focus on solving problems. These patterns of thinking follow the following steps. Step 1. What is the target condition? Define for yourself where you want to be in the future. What does that look like? And what intermediary target will you set to get closer to that goal? Step 2. What is the actual condition? This is the time for honest reflection on your current state. What is actually happening now? It's important to be as clear as you can be about what the current state is, because the gap between this and the target condition is the definition of the problem you are trying to solve. A problem without a clearly defined current state and a clearly defined target condition is not a problem. It is really just a complaint. Number 3. What obstacles do you think are preventing you from reaching your target condition? And which are you addressing now? You might perceive multiple obstacles, but don't try to tackle them all at once. If you do, then you risk shutting yourself down with overwhelm, and addressing more than one obstacle may require more than one approach. And we only want to run one experiment at a time. Otherwise, it will be difficult to measure which experiments are producing what outcomes. Step 4. What is your next experiment? What are the steps you're going to try to take to move yourself closer to your goal? And what do you expect to happen? By recording the parameters and predicting outcomes, we can better measure the results, just like you might be doing in your magical diary. Step 5. How quickly can you verify what you have learned in taking the step? Set a reasonable time frame for measuring the results of your experiment in order to determine whether you're going in the right direction. Once you've completed step 5 and have seen the outcome of your experiment, then return to step 1. Reconfirm the target condition. Make sure that you haven't decided that it was slightly off target to begin with, and then reassess the current condition, as it's likely changed as a result of your experiment. Your target condition may not have changed, but chances are the actual condition has adjusted in some way to your previous experiment. Be really clear with yourself about the results. Are you closer to your ultimate goal? Have you achieved the intermediary goal? In the next round of kata and all rounds that follow, add the following questions to your evaluation of the actual condition. What did you plan for your last step or experiment? What did you expect to happen? What actually happened? And what did you learn? The learning piece is the most important part of this process, as it is the key to making actual progress. As with any good experiment in a laboratory, when done in good faith, with scientific rigor, negative outcomes are not seen as a failure per se, but as data to inform future experiments. In your experiments to improve yourself, when done in good faith, they can be seen in the same way, and when examined with openness, can help prevent you from trying the same ineffectual techniques over and over again and expecting different outcomes. Here is a slightly different visual reference for the Improvement Kata, numbered in 4 steps. Number 1 is the challenge. This is the ultimate goal. Number 2, the current condition, where you are now. Number 3, the next target condition. This one is time-bound with a goal date. And number 4, the experiments. The green lines represents the sequence of experiments. Note that these experiments exist at the current knowledge threshold. As with anything, we can only create our vision, access the current situation, and plan based on what we know. As we learn more, we are better equipped to move forward, making incremental progress. My favorite Maya Angelou quote says it perfectly. Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. The Improvement Kata is a method of practicing the scientific method of problem solving, which can be further simplified into an easy-to-remember acronym, PDSA. Plan, do, study, adjust. You may also see some versions as PDCA, plan, do, check, adjust, or act. This simple idea is easy to remember and apply to growth and change. I hope you have enjoyed and found value in this exploration of practical approaches to true will. We have examined the cosmology of Thelema and how to lay a good foundation for the great work by seeking completeness, harmony, and proportion as people, and not being satisfied with sleeping our way through life. We have practiced one method, IKIGAI, of taking stock, evaluating ways that we can improve our lives and come a little closer to discovering our true will. With design theory, Improvement Kata, and PDSA, we have broken down the goal setting and problem solving process to give us the first most simple steps in the direction of living in alignment with our true will. All of these practices combined fulfill 1/2 of the equation for change. Dissatisfaction with the status quo, multiplied by the vision of positive possibility, multiplied by a plan of the first steps. All of this must be greater than the resistance you have to the change. Desire to change must be greater than the desire to stay the same. Now that you have a little more information to help you choose a direction and bring you more meaning and purpose and closer to the discovery of your true will, may your sleeping princess awaken. Thank you again for attending. You can find more information about Horizon Lodge and our events at our website, seattle-oto.org, and on our Facebook page, Horizon O.T.O. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.